All right, so valve train's all installed. We are on top dead center for cylinder 1, and I put 8 marks on the cam gear, and they represent each cylinder in order, basically in the firing order. So then I can go ahead and adjust the valve for each cylinder, and then have a really easy way to just deal with adjusting the valves, because I know a lot of people do it different ways. This is the way I've done it. It has never failed me yet, so we shall see, right? Some people do it very free and easy. In other words, they look at the push rods, and when push rods are all the way down, they know you're off the cam and turn it like a quarter of a turn, and then they go ahead and set their valve. That might be good for some people, but in my head, that just doesn't work. So I went ahead, if you remember from the previous video, we set our cam timing with our cam gear on the top, our crank gear 0 on the top, and that is compression stroke for cylinder 1, and both valves are off the camshaft when it is going to fire in that position. So you can adjust your valves for this. And the way I adjust the valves is I feel the push rod on a flat tappet cam. There's no gap in the lifter, but there's a small amount of hydraulic spring inside the lifter. To preload that lifter, you have to soak them in oil, obviously, to get the air out of them, and then assemble them in the block and with all the lubricants where they're supposed to be, like we talked about earlier. And then when you get to this point, you can adjust the valves, and if you put 8 marks on your cam gear, equally spaced, you're going to have 8 positions to set 8 cylinders for both of your valves for each cylinder. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there's 8 yellow dots at 12 o'clock, about 1:30, about 3 o'clock, about 4:30, about 6 o'clock, about 7:30, about 9 o'clock, and about 10:30. And they don't need to be exact, because we're going to know that those valves are not on the cam when we are in that position. So we'll just follow the firing order. So this is, we're on number 1. The way I do this is I loosen up. Can you hear that? It's basically just a little play in the push rod, and tighten it up until that play goes away, which is about right there. And then I turn it a half a turn, and that's my valve lash for my exhaust valve on cylinder 1. Do the same thing with the intake. And then add a half a turn of lash. That just basically means the lifter is going to be preloaded, so it's ready to go. All right, so here's the trick. I'm going to go to, if you look up the Chevy firing order, first one is 1, then it is 8, 2, 4, 6, 8 back here. So we are not on the cam, which is correct. And a little loose. So here, loose. And it doesn't matter if you start with an intake or exhaust, they're both unloaded off the cam, so they're both good. So there's our half turn lash. And then there's our half turn lash. All right, so there's 8. Then we're going to go to the next one. 7. 7 is back here. This is 1, 3, 5, 7. And looks like we are on the cam. So I did something wrong clockwise. All right, so because I can't remember a firing order, it's actually 4. So it's 1, 8, 4, which would be 2, 4 of this one. And this one is unloaded. We'll do 4. Next one will be 3, 1, 3, 5, 7. So we will do, that's really loose. Okay. All right, next one is going to be 6. 2, 4, 6. Next one will be 5. 3, 5. There's 5. The way you adjust these is very simply, you loosen the rocker shaft up until you get a tiny little bit of play. You want it basically to just touch the lifter. And if everything's lubricated good, you can actually see the oil film move. So I'm on 0 lash right here, but it's a hydraulic flat tappet cam, so that means the hydraulic lifter is going to have some lash in it. So you add a half a turn. So that we're adjusted on this intake valve for cylinder 7 now. We're going to check number 7 exhaust valve, and it's loose. You want to be really careful. You do not want to get a false reading on the lifter. You want it to be on 0. And that's 0, so we're going to add a half a turn of lash. Okay, now 7 is adjusted. And the next one is 2, which is here. And that one's adjusted. And then we go back to 1. And we are set. So we're set for the distributor, ready to drop it in later. So now I'm going to clean up the engine, throw some tins on it, paint it, finish any prep work that it has, set it aside. And then we're going to go ahead and prime the oil pump. And I made a tool for that just because I had an old distributor. And when you have an old distributor, of course, it's kind of nice to be able to use that. I could just put a drill on this now and run the oil pump and basically pump oil up through the block. You turn this clockwise with a drill and do it for, I don't know, a good 10 minutes. If you're inclined to be patient, I would do it more's better. You're not going to hurt anything by running oil through it. So basically all this is, to make this, I had an old distributor. I just ground the gear off of it with a grinder, and then ran a file across it to clean it up really good to make sure this bore was nice and smooth. And then I assembled this shaft in this old distributor, and then I put a split collar on the top with a washer, and presto, I just made a oil priming pump. Saved about 50 bucks. And I've got a couple of them. I got one here for a GMC V6, a 305 351 V6 from a leftover old oil distributor that was no good. And in this case, I didn't have a split collar, so I just tack welded a washer to the top, and it works fine for oil priming, so no worries there. So there you go. Some cheap homemade tools that work good and save you some money.